All right. Good morning, everybody. Can you just give me a thumbs up? Let me know you can hear me okay. Sound all right? I'll take that as a yes. All right. Thanks, Daniel. I appreciate it. Okay. Good morning, everybody. We'll go ahead and join palms as we begin and repeat after me. I take refuge in the Buddha. I take refuge in the Dharma. I take refuge in the Sangha. And putting the palms down. All right. Good morning, all. Thank you for joining us here live on location from my parents' house. Um, if you are new, you'll see a chat box there on your screen. Feel free to say good morning, say hello, check in with each other, etc. Nice to see all you regulars and new timers. The I think one of the things that's at least pressing on my mind right now, based on a few comments, and I may share more later, but just a few thoughts before we start meditation practice, especially for those who are new. If you've been around a while, you've probably heard me talk about this, but there's very often this, what I would consider a misperception that Buddhism is this kind of go with the flow type of thing, or this idea that people seem to think that, well, if you're Buddhist, you just allow things to happen and nothing matters, and you're just kind of floating through, and that really couldn't be further from the truth. Um, the reality, in my understanding of the Buddhist teachings, is everything matters. Everything is important. Uh, every thought, every word, every deed, as the Buddha called it, karma. Every action is critical because it creates the environment that we're in. So this idea that, again, often people have, if they're new to practice, that Buddhists just kind of disengage and allow the world to happen around them, um, it again is not the practice. It's really recognizing the role that you play in your surroundings with friends, family, relationships, work, whatever it might be. Um, so, uh, just to kind of wrap that up briefly before we start the meditation practice, for me, I think it's really important that people don't view Buddhist practice as this kind of escape thing. But I love the expression that comes out of, at least this is first place I heard it from, Thich Nhat Hanh's practice of engaged Buddhism, that you are very much engaged in community and society in the world. And even in the Theravada practice, where it's more of a remote forest tradition, where you remove yourself from kind of the everyday life that we engage with, even in that practice, Theravada practice is still incredibly engaged. It's engaged a little bit differently, but it's still very engaged. And even though it's a is a often referred to it as a Thai forest tradition, up at Meadow Forest, you're still really working on being very mindful and aware of your thoughts and your words and your actions. So, yeah, just a few thoughts before we start the meditation practice. So, again, good morning, Daniel, Andrea, Natalie from the East Coast, Lisa. Andrea, you might be out on the East Coast as well. Oh, no, that's Andrea from here, I think. Oh, that's funny. You two are listed together. That's so cute, like you're sitting together. Lisa, Marisa, Bridget, Cynthia. Is that Nick or Nikki? I think Nick. Um, and Nancy, probably Mark as well. Good to see you all with us this morning. We'll go ahead and start with a meditation practice. Yes, Andrew, thanks. I thought it was actually an Andrew from New York for happened to you. You will not float away, minute, but in the meditation practice, nothing's going. You will not have any mystical, magical experiences. Your mind that races all day long is not going to shut off. Don't judge your practice. I mean, you don't ask yourself, is it working or not working? Are you doing it right or wrong? We're just going to sit. We're going to breathe. You'll hear sounds, especially, if you're at home or wherever you are, maybe phones ring or dogs bark or cars go by. This is life. Maybe someone will walk into the room and say something to you. This is just what goes on around us as we sit and breathe. So don't expect anything from this practice. We're just going to take some time to allow ourselves to settle into present moment. Um, Posture, you want to be comfortable. If you're on a cushion or a chair, it helps often. Slide into the front third, pushing the stomach forward. Allows the back to straighten. Shoulders are relaxed. Hands can be on the knees or in the lap, whatever is comfortable. I'll guide us as we begin, and we will settle into a little bit of silence. Most important with this practice, do not expect anything. Once again, we're just going to sit. So, starting with the eyes closed, if comfortable, or slightly open. Mouth will be open or closed. We'll start with taking 3 deep breaths slowly. And eventually, just settle into a natural rhythm of the breath. Noticing the mind as it wanders, jumping from thought to thought. We'll start with gently guiding the attention, focus to the stomach or chest. Breathing in, feel them rise. Breathing out, they fall. And simply continue this practice, observing sensation of breath, expecting nothing but to sit and breathe. As the mind wanders, lost in thought, recognize it, release that thought, return attention, focus to the breath. Where is your mind? Return to breath. Letting go of expectations, letting go of judgment from the practice, just sitting, breathing. Keeping the mind alert, aware of each sound, each thought, each physical sensation, yet concerned with nothing but sitting, breathing. Breathing in, follow breath in. Breathing out, follow breath out. And with the body still, rested, and the speech quiet, aware of all sounds, and the mind learning to settle, know what it's like to just sit and breathe, knowing with each breath there's nothing else to do, nowhere else to go, no one else to be. Everything beautiful, exactly as it is, sitting, breathing, Once again, taking 3 deep breaths slowly. And as you slowly open the eyes, slowly begin to move. Most important, with the practice of meditation, is to recognize how you feel now, immediately after. Compare this to how you typically feel throughout your day. Recognize the difference, if there is one. Ask yourselves how you prefer to feel every day for the rest of your life. And realize however you feel now, if it's quiet, calm, and still, or a busy mind, racing mind, whatever you're sitting with at this moment, it's nothing to do with anything I said. It's nothing to do with how we sit and hold the hands or cross the legs. It's not from the sounds around us or anything else for that matter. It's everything to do with your own mind and your own mind's reaction to an external condition. This is what the Buddha called pratitya samuppada, means dependent origination. This is the basis of the Buddha's awakening. The word Buddha simply means awakened. He was a human being, no different than any one of us, who began to understand why he suffered, why he got angry, sad, depressed, stressed, anxious. He began to understand the causal relationship of all phenomena. What that means, very simply, for all of us, regardless of where you come from or what you believe in or where you think you're going, your whole life is filled with things that happen. You react. More stuff happens, more reactions. That's it. This practice is learning what it's like to respond to something quietly, peacefully, still. Because for most of us, the way you responded to the last 20 minutes is quite different from how you respond to everything else that's happening throughout your day. Meditation is not necessarily easy. It's not necessarily fun. It's not an escape. It's direct perception into this present moment. And often the present moments we abide in are very difficult. Once we stop trying to change, fix, control, manipulate everything around us, and we work on changing our mind and our reaction to the world around us, life gets simpler. Meditation is free. Buddhist practice free. It's sitting, breathing, and becoming aware of what you think, say, and do every moment of your life. And that's why I think for me it's really important, as kind of the message that I started out with today, just to remember that Buddhist practice is not checking out, it's not escaping, uh, it's not ignoring, it's not avoiding. It's engaging 100% every moment with the people, places, and things in your life, but doing it with a kind, compassionate heart and mind. That's the practice. So again, often people who are often younger with Buddhism or just newer, often younger people. I see this a lot in college age kids or even high school, or very often with people who are new, to where there's this mindset that you're just disconnecting and then kind of watching. And Buddhist practice is very much observing the world around you, observing yourself. Um, but it is very active. It's a very active practice. So I think part of the reason that this misconception arises is that the images we often see of Buddhist nuns and monks, the way they're typically portrayed in movies, media, things like that, is that they're very passive. And I don't see anything passive about Buddhist practice. I find it to be a very intense approach to life, but with a mind that's very settled. So to cut through, right, even if you see an image of a Buddhist monk or a nun, and they're in a robe and they're sitting by the water, um, and it might seem that there's this very passive thing occurring, but it takes a lot of work for that individual to have renounced or moved away from the life of um, cravings and uh, things that tie us to this human existence. The householder life or house dweller, uh, as it's referred to in Buddhism, um, is the life that we're all in. But even monks and nuns, that's where they started for the most part. Um, I did know out in Taiwan many monks that grew up in an orphanage and at a very young age became monks at 12. So for them, they really grew up in that. But for the most part, majority of the monks and nuns that you're going to meet and encounter within Buddhism come from family life, and many of them had corporate jobs, or many of them maybe were married or had children. So they had to very actively work on altering their path. So, um, anyways, with that, I'll pause. As always, I really just prefer to respond to questions, meditation, Buddhist practice, anything that's on your mind. And we'll use the rest of our time here this morning. For those who are new or joining us for the first time, welcome. Again, you'll see a chat box somewhere on your screen. Feel free to type a question or thoughts in there. And again, we'll use the rest of our brief time and I'll respond to your thoughts and your questions. Uh, Cynthia, good morning. Have you ever been called out on being a Buddhist when you may have showed anger, anxiety, etc., and how did you respond? Um, so I think most important with this question, and for me, obviously, it helps Cynthia knowing you for a long time and listening to your questions for many years. Not just you, but many people can be very attached to this word or idea of being a Buddhist. Um, for me, as a practitioner, yes, if somebody says, are you a Buddhist? The response to that would be yes. I identify myself as a Buddhist. But what that means for me is, when I break that down, it means that I am a human, first and foremost, who practices Buddhism, meaning I practice daily what the Buddha taught. Being a Buddhist doesn't mean you're enlightened. It doesn't mean you don't have anger or anxiety or stress. Being a Buddhist doesn't remove you from being human. It doesn't like throw out human and drop in Buddhist, and there you have this perfect being. So to me, the real heart of that question is dropping or moving away from or not attaching to this identity that you hold so tightly to as a Buddhist, right? So break this down. If you're pissed off at someone and all of a sudden you're in an argument and they say, well, you're a Buddhist, you're not supposed to get angry, right? And then you get more angry. You're not in either way practicing what the Buddha taught. But that doesn't mean you're not a Buddhist. It just means you're not enlightened. You're not a human. And this goes for any religion, right? Any, for the most part, great religious leader taught beautiful things. So, right, for someone who grew up, say, Christian, and they go to church and they identify as a Christian, and their Christian faith is very important to them. And I know lots of friends where that's the case. That doesn't mean that in every moment they're doing exactly what Jesus taught. So it's the same thing for Buddhism. It's no different. The response part, I think, to your question as far as how do you respond, it also gives you an opportunity to not attach to this label of being Buddhist and thinking that because you're Buddhist that makes you better than people. All right, I'm not assuming you think that, Cynthia. I'm just saying this in general. But very often people come from other religions and then they come across Buddhism and they read about all the kindness and love and compassion. I'm pretty sure Jesus taught kindness, compassion, and love. But if you drop the label of being Buddhist and if one stops thinking that Buddhism is better than another religion, it's a much healthier view. So one could say, I am whatever religion I am or practice, and I'm a work in progress. That's to me a much healthier approach. But um, in those moments, if someone, as you say, calls you out on being a Buddhist and because you're angry or have anxiety, what that says to me also is that the individual calling you out doesn't know anything about Buddhism. Because if they did, then they would understand that being Buddhist is not about being perfect. Right? You've heard me say this a million times, but that's the Shinra Suzuki quote of "You're all perfect exactly how you are, and you all could use a little improvement," meaning to have this view of ourselves that is not so negative, and to understand that we are beautiful humans, but we're also working towards being kinder, gentler, and more compassionate always. So, um, someone calls you out, as you say, um, your response is really unique to each situation, but um, it's, I think, a pretty safe bet to say, well, I'm Buddhist, but I'm not perfect. Um, recently, and it's just popped into my head, and I don't know how much depth I'm going to go into this, but I'd recently, a few weeks back, shared something on social media that was pretty shocking to the eye to see. Again, it goes back to the animal that was being slaughtered, and a few people responded that they were surprised that I shared something like that because I was Buddhist. And my response in general and very specifically was, well, I practice Buddhism, and therefore it is my practice to share kindness and compassion with myself and others. But being Buddhist doesn't mean that it's not about, very kind of Western English expression, but a people pleaser, right? Most people are familiar with that expression. Um, Being Buddhist is not about being a people pleaser, right? Uh, when it comes to, again, Thich Nhat Hanh and engaged Buddhism and social justice and all the disgusting things that occur in our worlds today, you can be a Buddhist and really fight very passionately for what you believe in, but do it with kindness. So, um, yeah, hopefully that's helpful. But I still think, Cynthia, for you, you often get very attached to, well, I'm a Buddhist, and what does that label mean? Um, and I would drop that label. I mean, the Buddha himself was not Buddhist. He was just a Hindu who taught good stuff. All right. Molly, good morning. I think of meditation as a refuge, but not an escape. Good distinction to your way of thinking. Um, there's a question mark, so I'm not sure if you're asking me if I think of meditation as a refuge, but not an escape. Yeah, I think maybe just to touch on that, um, and I'm seeing that more as a statement from you, Molly, than a question, but there's a question mark there. So that's what threw me off a little bit. But I think when I talk about, for me, when I share meditation and I say it's not an escape, what I mean there for, I think I initially started saying that, and I still say it really specifically for people who are new to meditation that might think that meditation is that going to be their thing that they're going to escape to. In other words, that their life sucks, so they're going to meditate, and that's going to fix their life, as if they're escaping from their life. And for me, meditation is not an escape, it's direct perception into the present moment. So even if we use meditation as a place of refuge, because the word refuge sounds better than the word escape. So if I use meditation as a place of refuge, meaning for me, refuge means safety, comfort, protection. If I use meditation as a time in my life that I'm going to go to a safe place, a happy place, a place of refuge, safety, protection, that's wonderful. But then again, also specifically for new people, when that, what you call or we call our meditation time is over, we come back to everything else that's going on in our life. So ultimately, I think that when you look very specifically what the Buddha taught, where he talks about meditation being sitting, standing, walking, or lying down, the idea that most people have is that meditation is this set thing that we have our life, and then we take 10 minutes, 20 minutes, 30 minutes, an hour, whatever, and we say, I'm going to go to my place that I sit, and I'm going to go to my meditation, whether it's at your home, in your room, at a class, whatever it is, and then I'm going to go back to our lives. And I think for me, what made this practice of meditation incredibly beneficial is when I really began to understand personally that meditation is a concentration and focus in the present moment. And therefore, there is no my life and then meditation, that your entire life is your meditation practice. That we may have a period of time each day, as I said, where we set aside and we call meditation a time where we're not doing anything else. But if you can blend it all together to where your whole life is a meditation practice, then the ideas of escaping or the ideas of refuge or the ideas of anything don't become separate from any moment in your life. That we can take refuge, safety, comfort, protection in every moment. I mean, even if you think of, prior to the Buddha's awakening, when he's challenged by Mara, his mind, and Mara rains hail and thunderstorm down on him, he doesn't run away and say, I'm going to go meditate and then I'll come back to you. He sits with it. And then, as the story goes, a Naga, King Cobra, came up and covered him and protected him from the rain and hail and thunderstorm, right? And then Mara goes away, so he remains seated. Another thing Mara does is Mara begins to shoot arrows at the Buddha. He doesn't get up and run away and say, I'm going to go meditate, and then I'm going to come back to you, Mara. He just sits, fearless. And in that meditative state, he puts his hand up. And then the arrows turn to lotus petals and fall to the ground, and Mara goes away. And then he returns to seated meditation with his hand back down in his lap. And then Mara dances his beautiful daughters in front of the Buddha. At this time, Shakyamuni, Siddhartha Gautama. And the Buddha is not fazed. He doesn't move. So he doesn't run away and wait for the dancing daughters to leave. He sits with it all. And then they go away. And there's a series of things that Mara does. And Mara is really his mind. But I think in this teaching, and looking at the moments just prior to Buddha's enlightenment, is that there is no separation between the meditation or refuge and his everyday life, because his refuge is in his mind. So I think that's important to see as well. So that's just some thoughts on that, Molly. Cynthia, helpful. Thank you. Love you. Love you too. Is that Nick or Nick? I think it's Nick. Okay, Nick. What's the significance meaning of the medicine Buddha? Let's see, Natalie. Okay, so Nick, starting with that, and Molly, if I'm totally off base or missed kind of where you were going with that, then please let me know. Significance meaning of the medicine Buddha. So in Buddhism, with Western folks who come into Buddhism, very often it's hard for us to think of Buddhism as this religious, faith-based practice. But it is. It is also a Western philosophical way of life, because it is. So when you look at the historical teachings of Buddhism, and Buddhism spreading for 2,500 years to various countries and cultures, initially goes, when the Buddha was in India, and then, 100 years after he died, it goes south into Thailand, Laos, Vietnam, Cambodia. You have the development of Theravada Buddhism. Few hundred years later, 400 or 500 years later, goes north, China, Japan, Korea. You have the development of Mahayana Buddhism. 1,000 years after he died, it goes into Tibet, and it really kind of sat there for 1,000 years. And you have Tibetan Buddhism, so and that's Vajrayana. So you have Hinayana, Mahayana, Vajrayana, three major schools of Buddhism for 2,500 years. Now, what you have is heavy cultural influence as well. And you have the phrase I like the most is what they call emanation bodies, or often bodhisattvas, enlightened beings, and different bodies of the Buddha, like a medicine Buddha. Medicine Buddha specifically is for health and for healing. I mean, that's why it's a medicine Buddha. You look at the statues of the medicine Buddha, and you'll see a jar in his lap with a little nectar coming out. They're very often associated with the color blue for lapis lazuli, the lapis being the healing stone. So the meaning of the medicine Buddha is health and healing. And where I talked about at the beginning of this with your question, with faith and religious beliefs within Buddhism, people literally will pray to the medicine Buddha for good health and for healing. People will pray to different bodhisattvas, whether it's a Kuan Yin bodhisattva or Manjushri bodhisattva or Samantabhadra bodhisattva. There are endless Buddhas, endless bodhisattvas, and people pray to them. Just like in Western cultures, we grew up praying to different gods or a Catholic saint or whoever it might be. So all of that stuff exists within Buddhism. It's just not the thing that most people who come into Buddhism later in life focus on. So hopefully that gives you at least enough to start doing some Google searching. But that's specifically the meaning of the medicine Buddha, and then a little bit of a larger picture. So hopefully that helps, Nick. Natalie, what are the Buddhist teachings advice on self-doubt and negative self-thought patterns about yourself? Well, this one, my friend, is very easy, so you're in luck. You said the word self 3 times in one sentence. Buddhist teachings on self-doubt, self-thought, and yourself. The Buddha taught very clearly, and bear with me here for allow me to finish this, but the Buddha taught that there is no self. So that makes it easy, right? There is no self to doubt. There is no negative self, and there is no yourself. All of those things are illusions, stories. And this, I think, will hopefully get to the heart of really what your question is about on a practical level. I personally love the teachings on non-self. I also really find it important for people to understand that non-self doesn't mean you don't exist. It doesn't mean you're not there. It doesn't mean that Natalie doesn't have a heart and mind and feel emotions and have self-doubt and negative self-thought and all those types of things. You are there. You exist. You just exist completely differently from how you perceive yourself to be. So self-doubt, negative self-thought, things like that come from stories in your head that you are carrying around with you for years and years and years from the past. So the only reason one would have self-doubt is because they have created years of stories in their head about them not being good enough. It's like the old Saturday Night Live skit. I think it was Stuart Smalley, and he would say, "You're good enough, you're smart enough, and gosh darn it, people like you." And that's a very healthy approach. But both of those approaches, whether you have negative self-thought and self-doubt, or you tell yourself you're the most wonderful person in the world, both of those are just ideas and stories that you're telling yourself. I find the practice of non-self, specifically with this question, much better. I don't want to say better, but much more beneficial in practice to say, I am human. This is my experience. I've done some good in the past. I've done some bad in the past. And here I am now. And a lot of our self-doubt or negative self-thought patterns about yourself, as you say, come from other people, or our experiences, I should say, with other people, where they've constantly told us, you're not good enough. You're not this enough. You're not that enough. You should be this way, this way, this way, and this way. Right? And so when somebody tells you for years and years and years, or you tell yourself for years and years and years that you're not good enough, it's really hard to break that pattern, as you say. But it's important to understand that all those experiences and all those people that have told you those things, that's not who you are. And that at any moment in time, you can recognize that you have what's called Bodhichitta, Buddha nature. You've heard me talk about this before. And that you inside, as you are right now, are already a fully enlightened being according to the Buddhist teachings. But the greed, the anger, and the ignorance are keeping you from recognizing that. So the practice, very simply, is to recognize greed, anger, ignorance, practice generosity, compassion, and wisdom. And in this case, with the nature of your question and knowing a little bit about you, um, the uh, anger and ignorance are going to be huge here. Angry at yourself, angry at others, um, as opposed to having compassion for yourself and compassion for others. Ignorance is going to be huge because you're ignoring the reality, which is life is as it is right now. And the only reason I'm consistently doubting myself and having negative self-thought is because I'm spending way too much time thinking about the past. So that's where, again, the meditation practice comes in, to learn to stay present. I'm alive, I'm breathing. I can be kind, I can be gentle, I can be um, perfectly at peace and happy right now if I stop telling myself stories over and over and over again about my past. Um, so again, coming back to non-self and learning to be in the present moment, if non-self, which I get for most, is really um, it's really hard to practice. But as a maybe baby step, to use that expression, start by maybe telling yourself self that you are not all the stories from your past and all the people in your past that have told you you're not good enough or smart enough or this enough or that enough. Um, that's all just a big story. None of that is true. So if one can not practice, is unable to really practice non-self, try to practice separating yourself from the past self. Glad that made sense. Yeah, non-self. Just be present now. Here you are, just a clean slate. Your whole life is in front of you. And as soon as you start thinking about the past, you destroy yourself, and not in a good way. So, 12:01, any final thought or question that I can answer in 60 seconds or less? If not, we'll wrap up. Time sure does fly. All right. So with that, we'll go ahead and we'll join palms. Do a transfer of merit. May the benefit of this practice be shared with all beings in all directions. May all be at peace. May all be free from suffering. May any merit gained be transferred to the more than 4 million lives that have been lost during this pandemic, and to their family and friends who continue to suffer. May they all be at peace. May we all be at peace and free from suffering. All right. Couple quick announcements before you all head out to wherever you're going, which is probably your kitchen. Thanks for being here. My name is Jeff. I'm a Dharma bum. We opened up the temple 15 years ago to bring Buddhist practice to those who show up. Those of us who lead, we're not monks, we're not nuns, we're not gurus, we're not masters, we're not teachers. We're not looking for students, we're just practitioners. We do our best to take our understanding of Buddhist teachings and put it into terms that hopefully make sense to those who show up. Pandemic started, we shut down for 16 months. We opened for about 5 months. And then about 2 weeks ago, we closed again. So everything is virtual. We did have a partial, in-person schedule, or most of it was in person as well as virtual. And now we're back to 100% virtual. So we do not have an open date set yet for the temple. We will continue with everything virtual, whether YouTube or Zoom all the recovery classes, everything's still going on. Um, for those not in San Diego, I mean, the pandemic is bad everywhere, but San Diego is just out of control right now. And it's just those of us who run the temple cannot even for 1 second think about bringing people together, which is interesting because people say it must have been hard to close the temple again. And I was like, nah, not really. It was actually pretty easy. We just shut the doors. We don't like closing the temple. We're not happy that we're closing the temple, but it really wasn't a tough decision at all. What would keep us up at night is bringing people together on a Saturday or any day. I mean, it'd be sitting there with 40 people right now. Looking around and worried about who's potentially getting sick inside the temple. That's what would bother us. So being closed was actually a really easy decision. It's a decision that sucks, but it's the condition we're in. So we will continue to stay closed until we feel it's safe for everybody, or as safe as possible. I think we're not going to be completely safe for a long time. So again, everything is virtual. Buddha for You, same thing, also closed. You can go to the Buddha for You website if you need anything. You can get stuff shipped from there, or there's a curbside pickup that you can arrange if you need anything from Buddha for You. So thanks all for being here. I wish you well. Please stay home as much as possible. Please wear a mask. Please be safe. There's way too many people getting sick, and let's do our bodhisattva practice and do our best to not add to more people getting sick. So thanks all. Be well. We'll see you soon.